Hello. Good morning, where you are.
Good
Um,
afternoon, where you are.
mm, to start, I'd like you to say your name and where you are right now.
My name is Scott Lacey. I'm in Brisbane, Queensland, Australia.
Okay. And the first question is, who are you as a person, as a human being? Who is Scott Lacey?
Who am I?
Yeah.
Who am I? That's deep existential stuff off the bat.
Mm.
Uh, I guess I'm a father. I'm a friend. Um, I'm an animal lover. Got got one on my lap.
Oh.
When I do online therapy, he's my co-therapist for me.
Mine is over there. She's very cute as well. Mm.
um, I'm a Gestalt therapist. I'm a freedom maximalist. I believe in decentralized, um, autonomous, community-run sense of democracy. I don't subscribe to the centralized power that's driving us into um, uh, wherever you see. I know what I see. I say that the world isn't working, and so I have a very strong, um, I guess, opinion about centralized power and how it doesn't work. And I recently found a book from Paul Goodman, um, uh, called People or Personnel Decentralizing the Mixed System, and it's a conversation about uh, how he sees, I guess, countries, communities, um, just areas of people can govern themselves and decide for themselves what they need, as opposed to being told um, by centralized power. I'm big on that. Yeah, I really like uh, Russell Brand's videos. He is on the same page as far as, I guess, smaller community-run, decentralized democracy. Um, yeah, big on personal sovereignty. I am.
So Paul Goodman and Russell Brand, they're quite distinct
Yeah, right.
figures. I like that. Yeah, I like that. Okay. So what would be some of your core values, your central values, and how would you say that you hold these values in your life?
Um, well, I guess it kind of all, for me, um, emerges out of that personal sovereignty, that I'm a capable, intelligent human being that can make choices for me and my family without um, being regulated into the way that I do that. Um, I guess, freedom would be my um, core value. And what was the second part of the question? To say it
How
again,
do
it
you
was
hold these values? How do you
um,
how do you live them
how
in
do
your
I?
life? Yeah.
Well, I guess I've always been a little bit anti-authoritarian, and um, uh, so I had a T-shirt a while ago that said "Good people disobey bad laws." Um, so I think maybe how I hold them is I just live my life as I would is if I was living in my utopian
Mhm.
concept of personal freedom. Um, and as a therapist, I support um, uh, personal freedom and self-expression and the creative process with my clients, because I know people come in with, I think, a hum of generalized anxiety, and um, I support them to, I guess, to use a Gestalt word, to spit out the introjects that don't work for them anymore. and start breathing in ones that support what they believe in, what the things that they choose to because I think beliefs is a funny word. Like I think we hold ourselves to beliefs, but we don't even really know what we believe some of the time. We just think that it's just the way it is. I guess I just support, as far as core values goes, it's just living a good life, living a peaceful life, living a life that doesn't impact others in a negative way or the environment in a negative way. I try and grow my own food. Like it's not really that possible in a small suburban place, but my whole block is all food gardens. So I get some of my foods. I couldn't say I'm self-sufficient by any stretch of the imagination, but everywhere where you can put a garden in my house or around my house is growing food. So that's part of personal sovereignty, is having a sense of food security as we sort of, the world is sort of heading into very uncertain times as far as, I guess, the cost of living. So the simplest way to sort of, like, I think we're in for really expensive times that a lot of people are going to struggle. So with me, I try and encourage others to think about food security and growing their own food as part of that. I guess core value of sovereignty, because if they control the food, they control the people in a lot of ways, It's yet I'm not a conspiracy nut. I'm edging towards that, but I only believe in presented documented fact. I don't subscribe to conspiracy, but I do believe that the way these centralized powers, both government, corporate, and the corporate media, are steering us into more and more dependency and control. Yeah, next question. I'm not sure if I'm answering your question anymore.
You can take them however you like. The next question would be an event or a set of circumstances in your life that you feel that have shaped you in a significant way, that have impacted you in a significant way. And how did they shape you or impact you?
I think one of the first ones was when I was 20. I moved into what is called the outback here in Australia. Like it was where I lived for 12 months was in the red heart. Like it's in the middle of nowhere. Like I'm in Brisbane. It's about 2,500 kilometers northwest into the Northern Territory. And as a starry-eyed kid with no confidence and just full of interjects, right? I was just told this is what you do and this is how you be. And I went out there where there's just nothing. It's just the most open landscape you can imagine, and barely a tree. And that caused me to slow down, and I think that's where I started to connect with myself on a deeper level. Just because it was 1992, so there was the internet was just a rumor, I guess. I think emails had just come out, and yeah, I connected with country, and I got a sense of with the Indigenous. I guess I got a taste of what it is like to be connected to country out there. And yeah, I think the slowing down, just because there's no other option in the desert, really I guess I started to wake up. Like it was almost like just rubbing the sleep out of my eyes, and sort of beginning to get a focus. So when I came back to the coast, um, I discovered counterculture. I decided that things like alcohol were not for me. Um, and I must admit that I did explore psychedelics and things like cannabis as well. But I rejected the mainstream when I came back, and um, started to be a bit more comfortable with who I was, because I felt so isolated before I went out into the desert. It's just interesting, because you go to the desert and it is nothing but isolation. But it was the isolation that allowed me to connect with me. And I met a guy out there who I would consider very spiritual, and formed a lovely connection with him. And yeah, so I'd say the desert was a really big one. Um, Having a child at 24, like 4 years later, um, was a beautiful experience for me. She's now 25, or she's turning 25. So I laugh, because it's like, where do the years go? And I just saw my daughter yesterday, and she's out in the world and studying and doing her own thing, and that have raising her has been an amazing experience. I've also got a 12-year-old daughter. Um, having children in your life keeps you young, I think. And I would say my Gestalt education was pretty significant as well. I was already on my path of being a relational, connected human being at that point, but the Gestalt education that I experienced here in Brisbane sharpened and honed my sensitivities, and how I view people, how I relate to people, how I hold people, not just in a clinical place, but everything that I do. Like it's not just something I do on an hour-to-hour basis. It's changed the way that I am in the world.
What about a person? Someone who has had a large impact on you as a human being.
Mm. Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, there's so many people. I'm 50 now, so it's hard to sort of pick a.
Oh, you can expand. It doesn't have to be just one. Feel free.
I would say I would say my mum first. She uh, you know raised my sister and I, from the age of adolescence, around adolescence, by herself, um, and and she stood for, I guess, um, in the best way she could, to show up and be a solid human being at a sort of critical time in my life, and adolescence, when everything's kind of crazy and uncertain, and I was quite I guess, a very insecure, scared child. My father wasn't the most supportive human being, and mum was probably the counter to um, uh, his way. So I would have to name my mum to be the first one. Um, and like my current partner, Han, we've been together about 4 years now. and she's someone who's experienced uh, as a refugee from Vietnam quite a significant amount of hardship, to say the least. And the person that she is, despite the things that have and haven't happened for her, she's a shiny, bright, loving human being, and she gives me hope, and I rest in her resilience sometimes. Even when I'm meeting clients and connecting with their hardship, I rest in her resilience, but also not just resilience, but I guess her compassion, that she has, despite having the world be quite cruel to her for a long time. And I want to name one of my Gestalt colleagues, Keith. He's one of my best mates, and uh, he'd probably be bashful at me mentioning him, but he's a kind, generous man who's solid and reliable, and yeah, just a really, really good friend. And I think that's what we need in today's world, right? This real solid connection that that's secure and safe and always there.
Now I have a question that's very broad again. How do you live or experience your gender?
Well, I'm a what's the cisgendered heteronormative male. um, so yeah, I'm a natural born male, and but I have a Henry. I have a within myself a deep connection with my own feminine energy, and it shows up as a therapist, right? To be nurturing and safe for people, and like, as far as I do struggle with I guess the extreme end of the woke movement with regards to identity politics. I think that's part of what, when I go back to the way the world's sort of descending into more and more control and less freedom, I think that the global elites are quite happy for us to point fingers at ourselves, right, and argue about things like identity politics and sexuality and all these things. While we're arguing about that sort of thing, they're shifting the sands that are tightening the reins on us on a global scale. And I also honour and respect everyone's right and sensibilities around how they identify, and will hold and support people in that way. But I do struggle with, especially in the United States, the far left, and how polarizing and that whole movement is. It's gone. In my opinion, it's gone too far.
And how do you experience your age? How do you live your age in this moment in time?
Well, I'm 50, and when I was finishing my my Gestalt training, I had 2 heart attacks, which was quite an existential shock. I've got the Viking gene, apparently. I found out since those events that it's just bad genetics. I just don't process cholesterol very well. I live a pretty healthy life. Not super crazy healthy, but I just got a bad roll of the dice genetically. So I still feel young, and I still uh, I guess I hope that I'm going to live another 25 years, right? At least. I'd like to live to 75, and anything over that's a bonus. Um, but with regular visits to a cardiologist and taking medication for the rest of my life, it's kind of um, uh, made me feel like I guess my time could be a bit shorter, and I've just plowed through 3 Irving Yalom books, all about existential psychotherapy and death anxiety and all these sorts of things. And I just, and the core of those books is just live your life the best you can right now, because, um, you know, disregard the things that are frivolous and time wasting, and just embrace what's important to me. And that's why I think I'm really grateful for becoming a Gestalt therapist, because I think that's what I was always born to do. Um, and the fact I started doing that in my 40s, mid 40s, it just means it's never too late to start living your life the way you want.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Mm.
started recently as well. Yeah. What about privilege? How do you live or experience in your life privilege and power?
Well, I guess I live in Australia, right, and where I'm a white man in a country that's um, I'm wearing I've got the Indigenous flag on my t-shirt, and I acknowledge that I live on this land that was never there was no treaty signed. Land was never handed over to the colonizers, and it's a privilege that me as a descendant from those colonizers has just taken. We took this land, and so I acknowledge that I have privilege that's riding on the backs of the Indigenous people on this land. Um, uh, and that's why, like, I'll do my best to, I guess, always sit in that. And when I meet Indigenous folk, to be humble and respectful, and if the conversation emerges, just and it feels like it's a natural and organic thing to say, I will acknowledge that I am a white man who lives on your land, and I live on the nation where I live is there's two nations. There's the Turrbal and the Yuggera people, that were the endemic indigenous that lived here. And I live a pretty privileged life. I live in a home that I own. Um, I don't want for anything. Um, despite having heart attacks, I have my health. Um, and but I think as far as privilege goes, I'm very grateful. I have gratitude for the things that I experience in my life, and it's a daily embodied felt. Like I feel grateful that I have my life, and I know I have privilege, and I don't suffer like so many people do.
Mm. Now we have some more Gestalty questions. The first thing is, how did you meet Gestalt? How did you first make contact with Gestalt therapy, Gestalt theory, whatever it was?
Well, I think it was about 7 years ago. I started dating somebody whose mother was just finishing her Gestalt master's program,
Mhm.
and I just got, I don't know, when when she mentioned what her mum was doing, I was just so curious and was just asking questions and questions and questions. And then when I met her mum, I she is such a lovely lady. Well, is. Oh, she's a lovely lady, and I just fell into it. And my girlfriend at the time really supported me to start the program. Um, she had multiple, well, not just a mum, but she had multiple friends that were in the program or had completed the program. So um, it was just through support from someone that I was dating at the time that had me believe in it enough to lean in and start the study, and starting academic study at 40, whatever it was, I guess 45-ish, 44, was quite a challenge because I just hadn't done academic writing ever. that was the scariest part. Yes, that was just through support, really. Interesting that you end up doing something that's supportive through support.
And what about the attraction? What about Gestalt therapy most attracted you to it? What drew you in? How'd you get hooked?
I don't know. I think I can remember someone saying during the education that, you know, it's kind of like if you imagine two tributaries of a river flowing into each other. Like it was Gestalt was very much how I've, in a lot of ways, without going into sort of too much theory, but it was in practice was very much how I was in a lot of ways. Like I think my biggest strength as a human being and as a Gestalt therapist is being relational. Uh, Even when I have initial sessions with people, they and if they've been to therapy before or not, they after one session with me, when I check in about how they are as they finish up with me, they're completely, well, let's just say they're disarmed, they're relaxed, maybe a little bit surprised, because I'm not a very, I sit with my feet on the chair, I don't wear shoes, I look the way I do with the beard and long hair and stuff, and I think that they're a little bit, they just are very, I guess, soothed and surprised at how relaxed they are in a clinic, in a clinical situation. Um, yeah. Can you ask the question again, please?
What first attracted you to Gestalt?
Yeah, I think the relationality and just the commitment to dialogue, right? Really, um, and I really, one of the things that I like about it as a I guess a beginning therapist is, um, and I always sort of explain this a little bit because I work at a clinic that has psychologists in the business name, so I do spend a little bit of time in case they've just booked me because I was the first available or something like that, that I'm not a psychologist. And what does that mean? You know, and uh, one of the things I love about Gestalt is it's, I don't sit here as an authority. Um, I, I'm a human being that struggles in life, both within myself and in the world. Um, and I'm not an expert of you, the client. You're the expert. I'm just here to support and walk alongside you to discover what we need to discover in the process of dialogue and experiment. And um, I just love it. It's not a snooty authoritarian approach to making people better.
Horizontal, right? Yeah.
Yeah. We're
Um,
on the same level.
yeah. Um, so you mentioned a little bit about your work. What is it that you do with work? How do you use Gestalt therapy in practice?
I think what I'm discovering now is that I just by being me, right? Like and I lean heavily in dialogue. I love the present-centered phenomenological inquiry into what the here and now experience is, what's it like with me right now. Um, uh, I love where it's appropriate bringing in a bit of experiment and seeing the um, people get close to their own experience out of the blue where they didn't see it coming. Where all of a sudden they're having a moment just because I've even maybe suggested an empty chair, right? Even before they start an empty chair, they're having big, big feelings and discoveries about, oh, I didn't even know that was there. Um, uh, yeah, I think the biggest one for me is just, and I'm loving this because it's happening for me at the moment. It's because I've got I won't say stable of regular clients now where I'm seeing them more than 20 times. And so as a beginner, when you get deeper into that, um, I guess relational context where there's a real intimacy between you and the client, um, I'm just sometimes I pinch myself because you know there's a reciprocity of love between you and the client. It's not a clinical. It's nowhere like the word clinical is funny, right? But it's where both myself and my client are in that space of deep safety and deep relational connection that it feels almost a little bit wrong to be charging for sometimes.
Yeah.
You know? Uh, but yeah, I think it's just a deep relational here and now stuff that's where I find myself in practice, just resting and the people just need to be witnessed. That is they hold so much of their internal worlds inside and just and they come to therapy to let it out bit by bit because they don't feel safe out in the world, even with their loved ones, to share some of the stuff that they bring in.
The next question is, how would you say Gestalt therapy has affected you as a human being, as a person?
I would say it's softened me a
Mm,
lot. Yeah, because even though I was quite relational from adolescence all the way through my life, I think I, you know, I probably held a harsher view, not on people, but the world. And I still have you heard me talking about centralized power and how I don't agree with that, but I've softened in how I think maybe even if as I think about it, softened towards myself too. In self-compassion and
mm,
how I relate to my own struggles. Well, it's a bit easier for me to be um, kinder to myself, and that has me then be kinder out. I think that's probably the main thing is just I'm a softer human being now.
mm. Um, and the next question is about the Gestalt community. Do you feel like you're a part of a Gestalt community?
Yeah, well, it's funny. Like most of my friends are therapists now,
Mm,
and no, they're not all Gestalt therapists either. Like I do rest on the emotionally focused therapy stuff for couples,
mhm,
and there's a lovely community here as well. in Brisbane as well, because that's where the two qualified trainers happen to be in Brisbane. So I've got quite a lovely community through the EFT, and obviously my cohort. I see a handful of my cohort on a regular basis. My supervisor, my Gestalt supervisor, Rosemary, and yeah, I think I want to. I'd like to have a deeper connection with the Gestalt community. I just think that the busyness of life sometimes gets in the way of that. But I was only just reflecting on how wonderful it is when you're a therapist and all your friends are therapists and the conversations that you.
Yeah,
So,
because then you're allowed, right? We're not allowed to talk about so much of what we do with anyone else. Yeah.
yeah. So I love that I'm held in that way, and I can hold others in that way. And I think it's one of the privileges of being a therapist
Yeah.
is especially in the in the Gestalt modality of um, you can just show up and sink in, right?
Mm,
Really just
yeah.
sink into where you are and where the other is, and it's like we get free therapy wherever we go.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. I share that. What about challenging moments related to Gestalt therapy? Can you recall?
I don't know. Sometimes I think when certain clients bring extreme trauma into the room, and um, holding holding them, and sometimes crying with them, because it's so painful. Um, like that's challenging. I find um, working with family members and couples challenging. But I have gone outside of the Gestalt. But the thing is about EFT and Gestalt, they dovetail beautifully because they're present-centered, body-informed, relational, and depathologizing, which is all the things Gestalt is, and the EFT approach is all of that as well. And plus, EFT was in part influenced by some of Gestalt's theory, specifically around the here and now, present experience. But I think as a beginner, there's a lot of struggle, you know. Um, I think maybe like I said, like more complex presenting clients. Um, uh, but I don't struggle with meeting them. I think I struggle with like maybe after the session's over, and me sort of, I guess, holding their pain. Um, uh, like I've had, I tear up when I think about certain sessions because it was it was beautiful, but also B, there was a lot of pain for the client.
What about some of your favorite memories? Your greatest memories in Gestalt?
I don't know. I think it's like every moment for me at the moment, because um, I enjoy even my more challenging clients. Like I just enjoy I just enjoy all of it. Um, I would say I don't know, because I literally enjoy all of it all the time. You know, I couldn't pick a moment.
Okay. So what's next? What's next for you? What are your plans? What's the future for Scott
Uh,
and for Gestalt? what do you see in the future?
I really miss group work.
Mm,
I haven't practiced as a facilitator group work since study. I'm actually doing group supervision I'm leading group supervision with the clinic I work at in a couple of weeks, which is a bit nerve-wracking because I said mainly psychologists, but I'm going to get them to sink into some Gestalt group process rather than talk about cases and things like that. But I'm going to get them to be in their own bodies, their own experience for an hour. I want to do some training in eco psychotherapy.
I don't know what that is.
I think I don't really know either, but it's being in nature.
Okay.
Um, like going for it instead of sitting in a room, it might look like going for a nature walk with your client in the therapy
Okay.
session, and using the ecology, the natural ecology, as part of the process. But I've and also not maybe in a couple of years doing the psychedelic assisted therapy training.
Mm,
I'm a big I really love psilocybin as a substance. Um, uh, I think that if I'm saying a bit like Timothy there, but it's such a beautiful experience, psilocybin, and I can see how it could be very, very useful in in
mm,
in a clinical setting for people because it has you connect with connection, like you feel connected to the universe in such a beautiful way that I think a lot of what we struggle with is non is separateness. You know, we feel so separate from everything, and and you don't need psilocybin to experience non-separateness, but it certainly hands it over in a beautiful, safe way. So I think, yeah, eco psychotherapy and psychedelic assisted psychotherapy
mm.
is where I sort of see myself.
Um, those are our basic questions, but is there anything you would like to add? Anything else you'd like to say? Anything I might not have touched upon that you'd like to share?
Um, no, I think that I'm just really grateful for thanks for inviting me into Humans of Gestalt. As a beginner, I'm like, there's a little bit of am I worthy, you know? um, uh, but I think, as I sort of lean into this more, I want to, I guess, help people feel connected because we
Mhm.
are connected.
Yes.
And if we rest in a Gestalt concept of field theory, um, it's the interrelatedness and the interconnectedness, and it isn't just a cognitive um, thing. How we don't just think that we're all connected. I truly believe that there is a mesh to rest into a fungi thing like the mycelium. You know what I mean when I say mycelium?
No, no.
It's the so in the forest um, subterranean, like where all the tree roots and the mycelium is the internet of fungi, and it creates the connectedness in the soil.
Mm,
And it's a if you ever watched that documentary on Netflix called Fantastic Fungi, they explain it quite beautifully there. But it's like the internet under the ground, and it's this interconnected web of and in the amount of information that's being shared in the earth through that mycelium is mind-boggling. I believe that we have our own mycelium, and that's that represents our interconnectedness, and how the fact that I'm in Brisbane and you're in Brazil, and we're talking, and the fact that we met through Margarita's training, and I don't believe it's a fluke. It was meant to be, and
We really are interconnected. Yes, I quite like that as well.
yeah.
So thank you for joining me, and I'm going to stop right now.